Okay, I need your 10.12 homework, please.
Yeah, that would just be a when it constructs the center, what is the and disregard the X's. You should just get some flares on it. That would like
Oliver's still out. Anthony's out.
imagine the versus facility.
Ashton. Okay, last call. Any other 10.12 assignments?
10.12.
The one
Yes.
the one I said I would be taking up.
I need to build the goals.
Okay, and then clear your desk off. For your main quiz.
And you can make that anytime you're in class.
You should just go for it.
You're fine. Just put it face down.
What? You don't want to get your tube out? Probably never. That's what it feels like. Okay, so pretty short. Got the 3 questions that I said you needed to memorize to be able to do those questions anyway, so you get 2 points for that. There's 2 points for a question straight from the homework. And then 1 multiple choice AP question that's only 1 point. So 5 points. Hopefully easy 5 points for you.
I think I'll just stick to quiz.
Okay.
That'll probably be fun.
Sorry, I might try. Thank you.
Also, just a quick heads up, they did email us tornado warning procedure stuff, so I guess the weather could happen.
Students and teachers, pardon this interruption. The National Weather Service out of Tulsa has issued a tornado watch for our area. Teachers, review your tornado shelter location and procedures. We will keep you updated with any changes. Again, this is a tornado watch for our area, so we will operate normally unless there are any further updates. Thank you.
Okay, so I didn't know that he was going to do that, but I was just going to warn you that that was a possibility this morning with the weather. So, of course, the warning, we don't need to do anything. If it comes back on, we will need to go out in the hallway and take shelter until it's safe. Just put it in there. Thank you. Okay, let's give everybody a few more minutes, please. If you're still working, that is fine. Go ahead and take a few more minutes, and then come bring it to the basket. But let's talk about what I'd like to get done today. Yeah, just throw it in the basket when you're done. Okay, so again, if you guys are forgetting to look that stuff over, you're kind of missing the point of these mini quizzes. I'm trying to give you some easy points to make sure that you can keep up with that small amount of information. So, like I said, until I lose my sanity, because it does take, I know they don't look like much, but to make those and print them and give them and record the grades and eventually pass the papers back to you and stuff does take a lot of work. So I will have another one for you next class that we'll talk about here in just a bit, assuming that we're not in the hallway the rest of the class. But we need to split into two different directions. So first off, I messed up with the numbering of something on our binder. So last class, I gave you some handouts that were numbered 68, and then I thought something else was 68, so I told you to call it 71. So I'm just going to call it both at this point. 68 is when I originally gave them to you. So the last day that I was out sick, I shared these with you. This is just more of the extra practice from last class, some of them that you didn't do last class. Now, first thing I want to remind you is that that class that I was out sick, the last class that I was out sick, I'd asked you to do some of these, so there's a good chance you might have already done some of this in your binder. So, again, I would always say, it's not going to hurt you to do it again, but if you did some of this already, you don't have to redo it for me. But It's got some practice over 10.11, both of the extra practices there. And I think there's 5 more questions from 10.13 and 5 more questions from 10.15. So anyway, so some of you need to go ahead and just start working on that, trying that out, make sure that you got what you need out of it. Obviously, you can skip around if you want to. The 1013 stuff should be a lot more familiar to you since you just reviewed it for a mini quiz. So if you want to start with that page, I guess I would kind of understand. But I also realized that you may have finished up some of these outside of class, last class's assignment. So I'm calling that 6871 Part 1. So if you have a couple questions that I could help clear up from that, then I can help you with that as well. So if you have questions, go ahead and tell me what they are, and I'll work with you on the board here to help that get cleared up. Otherwise, go ahead and start the extra practice that you picked up on your way in today. So I will be taking up one more assignment next class. It's your 10.11 assignment. I think a lot of you have already actually even given it to me. And before class is over, I will tell you what you need to know for your 10.12 mini quiz. Basically the same thing. I'll give you a point or two to make sure you have the stuff that you have to have memorized from it. A point or two, that'll be a question straight from your homework to see if you actually looked it over and studied it a little bit. And then a single point from a multiple choice AP question. So similar to today's, similar to the last couple. Again, I'm trying to incentivize you enough that you will spend 10 or 15 minutes looking that stuff over, because that's the best way to learn math, is to do it more frequently. Sitting down and doing 4 hours of math is great, but it's not as good as 4 one-hour sessions. So making your brain think about it as much as possible is always a win. Okay, so the questions that you may have had finishing up those 4 handouts I gave you last class. Does anybody have a question from that I can help you with? Also, there was one of those questions that had a typo on the answers. I know all the answers are shared, but one of those had a denominator of like, I think the answer said the denominator, part of the answer was like 720, but it was actually like 1440 or something. So if that sounds familiar to you, you didn't do anything wrong. There was just a typo on the answer key.
Could you do the first one on 10.14?
Sure. So the way these documents are scattered, it's 10.14 number 1, and does it say extra practice 1 or extra practice 2 in the top right?
It says page 2.
That doesn't tell me anything. Oh, in the top right it says CA.
Oh, CA1.
Okay. So that's corrective assignment 1, just extra practice 1. Okay, give me a second to get this printed out on my screen so I can help you. And again, if you know you were keeping up with the assignments I was asking you to do when I was out, you might have already done a page or 2 of this that you picked up today. So if that sounds right, you might look in your binder before you dive in and just do all of it. second. Okay, somebody asked for a reminder on this one. Again, this is from last class, so you really only need to pay attention if you know that you didn't get their answer as well. So, in 10.14 and 10.15, when we first started our mini quizzes, I had mentioned about trying to get you to memorize some stuff, because really 10.14 and indirectly 10.15, you have to have a few things memorized to be able to even start these questions. So this one says, what's the coefficient of x to the 6? Taylor series, centered at 0, and here's the function. So that function's kind of scary looking, but it's pretty similar to e to the x. And so this is why I asked you to memorize this. E to the x as a power series looks like this. And that gives you something to start with. Then you can inch it a little bit closer and call it e to the 3x squared. And then just realize that you're replacing x's with 3x squareds. So no x here. This x gets replaced with 3x squared. Over here, if you put 3x squared in here and then square it, that's like 3 squared x to the 4th. You put in 3x squared here, that would be like 3 cubed x to the 6th over 3 factorial. Make sure that you're not adding those exponents. A power to a power, those get multiplied. Dot, dot, dot. And again, you can take it as many steps as you need to, but now the only other piece I don't have is the divided by 4. So I'm going to look at this and just divide each of these terms by 4. So a 1/4, a 3/4, and honestly, divided by 4. If I'm thinking about what they asked me, I can really skip a lot of this, because I really only needed this one, right? I only needed the coefficient of x to the 6th anyway. So there's the answer. That is arithmetic, so as a free response, write that down out to the side, circle it, and be done. As a multiple choice, it's not too hard to simplify, so they're probably going to simplify this. 3 to the 3rd is 27. 3 factorial would be 6 times 4 is 24. Both of these are divisible by 3, and that's where they come up with 9/8 as an answer. So almost all the questions in 10.14 and a lot of the questions in 10.15, you have to start off with one of those things that you have memorized. And that's the point of memorizing them, so that we can quickly use them. Okay, is that enough there?
Yeah.
Okay. Anybody else going to ask about this one, have something deeper to it? Okay. Somebody else have something else from last class you needed help with, you didn't realize until after you left class?
Is there a difference in a Taylor series and a power series?
Well, Taylor series, no, not really. A Taylor series just means like kind of generic. You're taking some function that's not a polynomial and you're trying to write it as a polynomial. That's where we like did the point, then the first derivative. Do you remember this formula?
Yeah.
Okay, that's a Taylor series. These have just been done for us, basically. So you could figure out what e to the x power series is without memorizing it, but you'd have to think about, okay, what is e to the x at 0 times 1 over 1? It's 1. What's the derivative of e to the x at 0 times x over 1 is x. So these power series that you memorize, actually come from Taylor series. Taylor series is just kind of a broad term.
So e to the x would have its own power series.
Well, this is his power series right here. But it comes from his Taylor series. So. Okay. Others. Again, I really hope that these get easier as you go along. Look up formulas less often, feel more comfortable about what they're asking for. Obviously, that's the goal here. Want to get familiar enough with the process that when you see them on the AP exam, you remember how to start them quickly. And number 1 on 10.15, is that CA1 in the top right? Okay. Yep. Give me a second. I gotta print over. Okay, I had another question. It'll take me a second to get there, but on 10.15 from last class, question 1. So if that was one you wanted help with too, you might follow along. Okay, and when I did this one, I did have an arithmetic mistake in my work, so I don't actually have it finished on my paper, but that's fine. We can figure it out because it's just an arithmetic mistake. Okay, so ultimately at the end of this question, it wants us to figure out what number is being multiplied by x to the 5th for this function e to the x times sine x. So similar to the question you guys just asked, you need to know the power series for e to the x. Again, you could figure it out by doing a Taylor series, but that's going to take a lot more time. Too much time. It's kind of like parent functions. Like in parent functions in Algebra 2, you memorize some graphs because you use them so often. Same idea with these. Some of these 4 power series just get used so much that it's worth memorizing. Okay, same with sine. Okay, and now here's the hard part. You can see that they're multiplying these together. So I really need to try to take this stuff and multiply it by this stuff, and in the end figure out what number is being multiplied by x to the 5th. So I think this is where, when I was working this one on my own, I got a little careless here. So this would be, I'm going to try to be extra careful here. Okay, so there's my e to the x. I went out a little bit further. My sine x. Okay, so now I'm showing them multiplied.
Why'd you go one further?
Well, because I know I need, I'm not sure if I needed to go one further, but in the end I need to make sure I see all the x to the 5th terms so that I combine them together. And so I was thinking, if I don't do this x to the 4th times this x, I'm missing an x to the 5th. So I'm missing part of where my answer should come from. So a lot of times I just do what I think, and then I realize maybe I need more, and I'll just add more as needed. So anyway, so you can start multiplying these together, but be smart about this. Don't actually distribute all of this to all of this. It's going to take you way too much time. We only care about the coefficient of x to the 5th. So x to the 1st is not an x to the 5th. This is not an x to a 5th. I'm distributing the 1. 1 times this stuff is an x to the 5th, so that's important. Distribute 1 to this, that's not an x to the 5th, so I don't care. Now distribute x to all of this, that would be x squared, x to the 4th, x to the 6th, x to the 8th. Nothing x to the 5th, so don't even bother keeping up with it. X squared stuff times x would be x to the 3rd, and then these two would be x to the 5th. X squared times x to the 3rd would be x to the 5th, and 2 times 3 factorial would be 12. So that one's good. X squared, x to the 5th, x squared, x to the 7th. Neither of those would be x to the 5th. X to the 3rd distribute to the 1st is x to the 4th. No good, no good, no good, no good. Okay, and then last one, x to the 4th times x would give me an x to the 5th. Okay, and I don't know. I don't memorize most of these factorials. So 5 factorial would be 5 times 4, which is 20, times 3, which would be 60, times 2 would be 120. So 4 factorial is 4 times 3, which is 12, times 2, which is 24. And assuming we're trying to finish this without a calculator here, I've got 1/120th. I could multiply the top and the bottom of this by 10, and this I could multiply by 5. So 1 times 5 is 5. So 1x to the 1/120x to the 5th minus 10 120x to the 5th plus 5 120x to the 5th. 1 minus 10 would be -9, plus 5 would be -4. And again, I told you I messed up the arithmetic when I was practicing this yesterday, so hopefully I was a little more careful here. And I can still reduce. How many times does 4 go into 120? 30 times? Okay, so is this my answer? Right, just a coefficient. So the arithmetic was not much fun there, but like most of these questions in 1014 and 1015, if you know the 4 things you have to have memorized, this time they just wanted you to multiply them together, and it was just very messy. But multiply them together, really only keep up with the x to the 5th stuff because that's the only part of the answer they wanted anyway. And then, of course, this would be a lot easier to finish with a calculator, but even without a calculator, you could get a common denominator like I did. Yeah.
I believe it was the last problem. When we multiply the exponents together, why did we add them this time?
Well, what is x times x? So when you multiply things with the same base, you add the exponents. What is x to the 3rd squared? Because it's like you've got x to the 3rd times x to the 3rd, right?
Yeah.
So a power to a power, they get multiplied. Multiplying things with the same base, they get added. Okay, is that enough there, Melissa? Okay.
Are you taking problems?
Yes. Yep.
Can you do number 5 on 10.13?
Is that CA1 in the top right?
Sorry, what?
In the top right, does it say CA1 or CA2? Okay, no, that's fine. Okay, give me a second to send it to my computer. Yeah, I don't mind answering questions the whole class. If y'all have stuff you need help with, it's ask now or ask a week from now and you struggle with it more. I'm just not going to beat the questions out of you, so. Sorry, give me just a second. I have to send it to my computer so I have it on here. There's too many individual documents to just do them all. Oh, I really like this question.
Everything was even? Right, right here.
You said number 5?
Yes, sir.
Are you gonna try to get like further along again? Let's go.
Okay, please make sure that the front page of yesterday's assignment, question 5 on the front page, please make sure you don't need help with that before you go back to working on today's stuff. Okay, so question 5 gives us a very generic power series, not one that we can kind of work out by hand very well, or at all really, but it gives us a few clues. It converges at x equals 7, and it diverges at x equals -5, and from this, and this power series, we should be able to know which one of these things is true. So you can start wherever you want to, but I think the key is thinking about this one. The series is centered at x equals 1. Do y'all think that's true or not?
Yeah.
Okay, and how did you know?
Halfway between your endpoints of your convergent.
You're a bit ahead of me. How do you just know it's centered at x equals 1?
Because 1 minus 1 is 0.
It's the thing you're subtracting from x is where it's centered. You're so used to questions being centered at 0, you're not used to seeing anything there. But whatever you're subtracting from x is where it's being centered. So this one is true. So that throws off one choice. But now we have a little bit of a visual here. If the centered if it's centered at x equals 1, and they tell us it converges at x equals 7, so that means it's got to converge to all of the stuff up through 7. It might be more than that, it might be to the left of that, but it guarantees that it has to hit it, everything from 1 to 7 has to converge, which would include 6. So that throws off one more choice. Okay, and then somehow we're supposed to know if 7 is an endpoint. So it could just be that 7 converges, but maybe 8 converges, and 9 converges, and 10 converges. They didn't give us enough information on that, except that they told us it diverges at x equals -5. So 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So if this diverges here, the distance, or this radius, this radius here is 6, and this radius here is 6. So there's no way x equals -5 would have to converge if the radius was bigger than this. So this was the first place it stopped converging, which means this was the max place this one could converge, and that means he was an endpoint. So I think trying to set up this visual here, show the center, count out where it says it converges or diverges. Obviously it has to converge everywhere between the center and anything that you're sure it diverges. But the fact that this one diverges at -5, and this linked with 6, and this linked with 6, means that this one, both of those had to be endpoints. It's just this one wasn't included and this one was.
Thank you.
You see what I'm saying? Because if the radius was 7, then this would have to converge. That wouldn't make sense. So it forced the radius to be 6, which forces x equals 7 to be an endpoint. But I don't know. Usually these type of questions I think are pretty hard, that have multiple parts and you got to figure out which ones are true. But I feel like on these, if you sketch a little picture and visualize the information they're giving you, it's a lot easier to figure out what's true and what's not true.
Thank you.
Of course. Okay, keep them coming if you've got more. Others from last class? Let me pause for a second, make sure that you are checking You have a full chance to check that.
Mr. Thompson,
Yes.
can you look at CA1 10.14, question 4?
10-14, you said?
Yeah, 10.14 CA1, question 4.
Yep.
You don't have to do the whole thing, I just have a question about how you distribute, how you multiply.
How to multiply?
Pretty much.
Okay. Oh, wait, I already got this one up. Okay, 14 CA1, question number 4. Okay.
What is the difference in the way, so I know sine of x.
Yep.
And then sine of 2x, when you're transforming that power series, just
Yep.
multiply all the x's by 2. But then
You don't just multiply all the x's by 2. You replace each x with the 2x. Because if it was like x to the 5th and you replace it with 2x, it becomes 2 to the 5th x to the 5th, not 2 times x to the 5th.
Gotcha. So then, when you're multiplying the whole thing by x, you just multiply, that's where you would multiply every term, just by
Yeah.
x.
Uh-huh.
Now, 2x is where you replace all the x's with 2x.
Correct. Yep.
Thank you.
Isn't that kind of weird, just like based on where it is, what you got to do? Slightly different spot changes the whole mathematical process. Okay, let me ask you to pause for just a second, because again, as of right now, I'm not completely dying in papers, so I do want to give you another 5-point mini quiz next class. Again, I think I'm doing you a favor here, so, but it's going to be from 10.12. So, just like we've been doing, it's going to be very similar format. So the one thing you need to have memorized from 10.12, and I need to grade these and get them back to you so that you have them, is there's only one thing that you really need to memorize in 10.12, and that's this formula. The formula that gets used for the Lagrange error bound, and figure out what that remainder is. So that's a pretty hefty formula there, but you can't really do this section of questions without knowing the formula. So 2 points will come from having this formula memorized. 2 points will come from a question straight from the homework. So if you review your homework, you're more likely to get those. And only 1 point will come from a AP multiple choice question, just like today's. So let me hold off on questions. I'll give you another chance to ask here, but let me grade your homeworks real quick so I can get these back to you, because your homeworks are where that formula is, and your homeworks have the questions that could show up on the quiz that I would like you to look over. So.
This is the fourth error bound noise. So you had the plug in 4 for this.
This is for
Let's say. I also did.
But I think they can see into the watch. It's not like that, like, need to. But like, I just
No, it's top to bottom.
That's scary.
I know, but that's, what do you think's gonna happen?
You know, the kids who already sit there all the time.
I also-
You know, have a little fun.
Okay,
So.
and also, wait, well. Okay, I guarantee there's gonna be first $1 million to someone that has the ball.
you might have had like it's.
Actually, that, I think that is a very, if that's actually what's happening.
On top to bottom bathrooms.
No, it's not. You're joking. No, I don't think it is. Wait, genuine. They were genuine. Serious. I heard it was. Is it hurt?
Yeah, it's hard.
I ordered it at
I don't think they would.
Brendan, Brendan.
I'm gonna try it. We'll try it. We'll test it. We'll see if we're protecting you. We'll probably not. So they were supposed to get the instruction. You asked about it and I didn't listen on this one. So I probably should.
I hope not.
So because
I'm trying to get, my team is Charizard, Mega Charizard Y, Ninja, Mega Lucario, Helios, and then
I didn't ask you those questions last time.
Just Slash, it's the Sword of the Shield. I can't get it right now. Dusty Stone. There's a few leaves, so you can find it. It's, you can't get it until it's the one single little trap on it. It's so I'm level 60.
You got work to do?
Just Slash.
This one, I don't know if you didn't finish it or if it.
I lost my other paper.
Okay, so if you find it, let me know.
Yeah.
There's also spells, but switches I already got caught. So before you can, before I was just about to get this.
Okay, I got your homeworks passed back, so again, let me repeat what you need to prepare for the mini quiz. Someone told me yesterday it was a B week, but I have no idea.
It is a B week.
It is a B week? Okay.
It's a B week.
So, between now and Monday is a long time. You need to write down somewhere what's gonna be expected of you. 2 points for memorizing the air-bound formula you need for 10.12. 2 points come exactly word for word, one of your questions in your homework. So if you review it, it should pay off. And 1 question that is multiple choice AP. You can't prepare for that one, but you prepare for it by looking at your assignment. But I would suggest you write that down so you don't forget and you prepare properly. But I said once I was done with that, I would offer, was there anything else from last class's assignment that I can help on? Okay, then while we are here, is there any of the handout from today that you've tried that you find to be harder? Okay, then go ahead and keep going. You've got about 40 minutes of class, and I'm here to help as you guys get stuck. So please go ahead and ask as you get stuck. There's no point in waiting. Calvin, you want to get some work done while y'all are visiting there? That'd be good, thank you. Yes.
Is this the tablet you're talking about? Where's 1440?
Yeah, and it says 720. Yeah. Yeah.
Did you do level 5 on 10.14?
1014, number 5.
CA1.
Okay, this guy?
Yes.
Okay. I think you're gonna think this is a lot easier once you're done, so. Alright, when you look at all of this stuff, this whole function, what is it closest to as far as the power series that we memorize?
Cosine of x.
Okay, and cosine of x is
1 minus x squared divided by 2 factorial plus x squared.
right, all the even stuff. So we could write out a few of those. We can go further if we need to. Make sure that it alternates also. Okay, well, I would like to add 1 to that. So what happens when I add 1 to this stuff?
Add 1 to every individual term.
To the whole thing. So what's 1 plus 1?
1 plus 1 is 2.
Okay, what's 1 and x squareds are not like terms. You can't combine them. 1 and x to the 4th are not like terms. So adding 1 only changes this. And then add an x squared for your answer. So 2 plus x squared doesn't do anything because those aren't like terms. 1x squared minus a half x squared would be a half x squared positive. Okay, and then an x squared added to an x to the 4th, those are not like terms, can't do anything. X squared added to x to the 6th are not like terms, those can't do anything. And they only wrote out a couple terms, but that would be choice A. So you really only needed to know what cosine was. Add 1, just make sure you add 1 to the other constant. Add an x squared, just make sure you only add it to the x squared, because that's the only thing that makes sense.
So
So
we don't have to, if 1 and x squared don't have their own power series.
You can-
How will we know if the things up there don't have their own power series? We would know if, it's cosine x plus sine x, or plus ex, or 1 over 1 plus x. But if there's other terms up there that are larger than just 1 or x squared,
yeah, that's a good question. They wouldn't ask that of you. So it's either going to be 1 of the 4 you need, or you can assume that you don't. You don't need to do more. Now, of course, what would make this a lot harder if it wasn't 1 plus x squared plus cosine x. If it was like multiply, then I would have to do a lot more work. But since it was just adding 1 and adding x squared, you just added 1 and added x squared to what you had memorized. So.
and if there were no like terms for it to be added to, would you just throw it on the end of the power series, or the beginning?
Sure, because I mean, if this was a 0, if you add, and it's not written there, if you add 1 to 0, you would get 1. So you're still going to attach it on. If there was no x squareds here, and you added an x squared, well, then there's going to be an x squared. So yeah, it's going to attach to the answer. Okay, I'm trying to grade your quizzes for today so you can at least see your grade in the grade book. I know that they're just small quizzes, but I'm still going to hang on to them until they're all made up. If you know that you're missing any, I'm not going to call you in during advisory over a 5-point quiz, but please just come in as soon as you can to take it. But even though I'm doing this, please interrupt me as you guys find questions. I can do this later. I can't help you later, so. Now, I've only graded about 5 of these, but the most common mistake is to undo multiplication. You undo multiplication with division. At least 2 people have messed up their final answer with that. They did multiplication to undo multiplication instead of division. At least it's, I mean, that would just be 1 point, but it's an easy fix, but.
Oh.
So they put the project grant.
We also used to play. Yeah, yeah. Yes.
So the things that coordinate, you can't. Last year, same thing, on graduation day, we had days. Just in the season, 30. I don't know if the state championship was serious. I was like, I don't know. He was just one senior side.
We're good.
Another person didn't undo multiplication with division.
Oh.
Uh-oh. Undoing multiplication with division.
They're saying like 3x equals 1, so x equals 3.
I definitely did that. I did
I was actually thinking about it. I was thinking about like the normal lizards. They just like this.
something like that, yeah.
It's like that. Oh yeah, he's got different stuff, but it's like bolted so. I saw it. He's like this.
Yeah.
I literally were texting how do you know this?
Okay, again, I'm not gonna pass these back today because we still got a few people I'd like to take it, and I don't wanna make up even more forms of the quiz that are already there, but you can at least see your score in grade book. And again, if you haven't taken some of the first ones, like 10-15, 10-14, actually, it looks like everybody in here's done 10-14. Let me see if my fifth period has. Because if they have, I can pass it back to you. Okay, yeah, that's close enough. You have not taken 10-14?
I'm taking very bad.
I like it.
But gotta be one.
Oh, you're right. Thank you for telling me. I overlooked it.
What does it do to you?
Still has some like look. I don't know, once it gets down to heroes, I can still.
Yeah, I was gonna do that today, and then it was like 9:50, and I was like,
You get a lot.
I still was like studying for it.
Yeah. We need to move forward.
General term?
Yeah.
Term,
Don't
whatever.
worry.
Yeah.
We'd much rather do it now than at home.
That's true.
Like, it's not horrible, but I feel like you might put something weird on there, so I need to like actually do that. It's just.
Might be better for you. Yeah, that's fair. But I can't ask y'all to done something in an hour and then like that.
It's a bird.
Was it concerned?
It was chilly the first time I went outside. We went outside and I was like, no, my student ID.
I didn't hear Thompson.
And
Okay.
so I turned around and next time I went out,
Well, it's.
the bird was like,
I did, I printed it out, like before I got your copy, and I worked on that, but
I'm just making sure you didn't accidentally.
I kinda just looked at the solutions and wrote them down on that, so then I decided I should actually work it, and try it on the one you gave me, so I did that.
Yeah.
But no, yeah, I don't really need that.
Hate to leave her alone with the bird, but you know. Yeah, I texted her. I was like, there's a bird in the woods, and she was like, there's a what? That's what I get. There was a nest on the door that I still remember when I was like, picture, no eggs. I'm smacking that thing down.
Bird eggs?
No, there were not any bird eggs in the
Oh.
nest, so I hit it with a broom, and then I flung it.
They
in the
just
woods.
saw the eggs and was like,
Yeah, saw the eggs.
That's 100%.
No.
We had bird eggs like right by our door last year,
Yeah.
and they were getting a little bit bigger. They were still way too tiny to be on their own. And then one morning they just were gone, and we looked it up. Apparently squirrels eat baby birds.
Oh.
So I think there was a massacre the night before.
Yeah.
It was kind of sad.
massacred a well-fed squirrel.
Yeah. Well, our squirrels are already very well fed, so. I usually grow tomato plants, so they usually get all the tomatoes they want.
I know last year they did like lay eggs and raise babies like under our porch, which was very annoying for going in the door because the birds would get mad when you go too close. You have to go too close, and they like
Start attacking you a little bit. Yeah.
they like building it like in the corner of the door so that it'll get crushed. The nest will get crushed if you like open the door too far.
That's
Very annoying.
raptors.
They make terrible choices. There are trees everywhere. I live like in the woods.
There
I
are
have so
trees
many
everywhere.
options.
You choose one.
You choose my door.
Well, they probably think like other predators might be scared to come there. You're gonna help protect them.
That's
I don't know. I'm
Start
guessing,
building
obviously, but
Pay protection money.
If they start paying rent,
Pay
then
rent,
it'll be
yeah.
fine. Or if they start like,
I've recently heard that crows are really smart, and like somebody, I heard this somewhere on the internet, so I don't know if it's true, but like she started feeding them and stuff. Yeah, I've got some right here. There's some big ones. They started feeding them, and then like they started bringing her prizes like twigs and stuff.
I've seen a lot of things like that. They know how to get what they want. I saw a story one time about how the birds started bringing her like money, like bills that they found.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's funny. Shows up with like $100,000 in a bag one day.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
I can't do like a monster act. That's from the points.
There's like a bank being robbed in town, and your bird brings you a bag. I know, it's kind of sad though, just like realizing how smart they are, and like, you know, we just do what we want within the environment, and they just have to adapt around us. I mean, I know that that happens, but to think about it is sad.
One of the smaller sticks that.
Yeah, you can have a few, as long as you're not taking a bunch, it's fine.
Thank you. I just need it for a book more.
I went to the landfill yesterday for the environmental science field trip, and it's crazy how much trash there is. So they do like they put soil layers over all the trash every day. But it's just this massive hill, and the guy was like, yeah. So right now we're driving on about 80-90 feet of like compressed garbage. That's insane.
Love what we're doing with the environment. Yay!
Did you ever hear about the guy who threw his computer away that had a bunch of Bitcoins on it? He had like an old computer and had Bitcoin before it was like popular, and threw his computer
Well,
away.
it's actually worth money.
Yeah, and then so he goes to the city council and he's like trying to, because you can't just go dig around in the landfill. Like, yeah. So he like tries to get permission, and like he wants to know like, he knows when he threw it away, so where would it be in the landfill? And they just told him no chance. And then he offered to split the money with them, and they still said no. If he found it, because I mean, no guarantee you'd even find it anyway. But
Yeah, it would be so much of a hassle just because of like the whole process, and the computer would be like completely crushed anyways.
Yeah.
Okay, so
Oh,
you-
well, I mean, I
don't know.
get like.
yeah, but if you had $30 million, I think you would want to try.
Yeah, that's a good
Yeah.
point.
Do you plan to just eat basically?
I don't know anything about Bitcoin, so
Yeah, you might want to.
All
Well-
I know is it was worth a lot of money.
I would say
It might probably still
try
is.
to do the
I don't know.
technology.
Yeah.
Because I think just you can find it.
Yeah.
A whole lot of events going on.
watching that go down.
It really is.
My bad, body going.
I got an ad on I heard it, I was like, don't stop buying such stuff.
Stop.
Like, oh boy, Tumblr's really the target audience here, isn't it?
Yeah.
Tumblr for all the reasons.
I know.
Like, no.
Wait, okay, so it's every 30 minutes you just swipe, but I thought it was like.
Yeah, no, Tumblr wasn't
There's
still
still a
like
yield
that.
cap per read, even though it's called unlimited. I don't know, it's not, I might be wrong. Listen, I'll look it
I
up.
do know that with the dining halls.
Might have worked on Reddit, but
It might have worked on Reddit. Oh my god.
Your
Yeah.
husband likes that too, right?
that's for all that
Yeah.
So.
Honestly, you know, it's such like a crazy time about politics. It's
Yeah, no,
not.
okay, it's not okay.
I dream of living in uninteresting times.
It is, you're
You remember those times like you get out of the morning and you just go to school and like you like and you wouldn't even like look at the news.
$90 is different.
Couldn't be me anymore. And the news would be like,
I think $90 is.
Barack Obama gave a kid a flower or something.
I thought it was for
Just
snacks.
something random like that. And you'd be like,
It was like places you
wow,
can get snacks.
that's not interesting, but you know, that's fine. And I was just like,
Let's see,
what
it's.
new fresh colors am I waking up to today?
I thought what,
That French far
Did I
right
just have
leader
to
lady
read that?
got arrested
No,
for
yeah,
what, embezzlement?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Sentence, or like, she can't run for 5 years or something. And then she's house arrest for 2 years or something like that, right? Yeah.
is that gonna be, is that how that would work?
Love imagining her
Or is that
with
for,
an
cause
ankle
I heard that it was $60
Probably,
for so funny.
probably.
Yeah, one of my friends was talking about that yesterday, and they were like, isn't it crazy that they're, like,
Just because this is real with my.
the punishment's crazy? No, not the punishment, like, or, no, the punishment
If it wasn't worth it, if you use
crazy,
it, I mean, if you use
like,
one.
it wasn't actually like an embezzle,
If you're not
it was
feeling
like,
sick.
apparently it was like hazing, so there was like funds set aside to like pay like an assistant kind of position, because those funds pay like a security guard instead,
Yep.
or something like that. Yeah, something small like that. And so my friend was like, isn't that kind of like an overreaction? He's like, there's probably other people that are exactly like the administration. And I was like, dude,
I don't know.
at this point, that seems normal compared to
Taking, I'll take the ones we can get.
kind of normal, a little bit,
That's my goal, I'm gonna go in there.
like, it's not even that extreme.
Now, good,
Not compared to what we have.
That and then maybe two years of house shows, I don't know.
but.
If it were, if this were fictional and not real life, I'd be like, okay, so this is like a thing they can prove to charge us.
Yeah.
But I don't know if that actually happens. I'm not gonna lie.
So we go to hot now. Hot, see there's no, if there's not a way to this.
I don't know.
I don't know.
What if you're using this one?
I see those, sometimes I love all these ones, they almost don't look.
Oh, yeah, no, you kinda.
They have a guy
Yeah.
every single day.
I hope you get a really bad.
It's like a whole thing, like,
Yeah.
or like,
Are honest.
no, like, literally, because hot glasses, like known for like not even closing very like earthy. And so like whenever something bad happens to a lot more like,
couple days.
Yeah, but now
I see Neighbor West.
now it's affected all
Those
Waffle
are
across
awesome.
America.
Those are like 7 businesses.
We went to a Waffle House when we were on the way to Disney.
She said she was, then.
Solidly okay.
Well, I mean,